Welcome to the Digital Amateur Television Experimenters Night. This is VK7OTC, the club station of the Radio and Electronics Association of Southern Tasmania. Amateur radio is a worldwide hobby that has many different aspects. Digital television is just one of the many modes and areas that are covered. Maybe you're interested in becoming involved in the DATV Experimenters Nights. Do you realise that you do not have to be a radio amateur or need any ATV equipment to participate anywhere in the world? Also participate in the night by coming up to the Queen's Domain club rooms. Yes, right on top of the Queen's Domain in the heritage-listed Coast Wireless Station. You never know, we might get you in front of the camera or behind doing one of the many roles during the night. We get underway with our program on a Wednesday night from 7:30 p.m. local time. We'll see you soon. This is VK7 OTC.
Okay, this is VK7 OTC, the club station of the Radio and Electronics Association of Southern Tasmania with our DATV Experimenters Night. And I've got Lance, VK7TO, now sporting his new call sign.
Indeed.
He's gone from ZA to TO. And congratulations as well on our RD win.
On our domination.
On our
third year in a row.
It's got to be that new call sign. Yeah?
Absolutely.
Anyway, just before we get underway, I wish to acknowledge Tasmanian Aboriginal people as the traditional owners of the land upon which we present tonight, and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, for they hold the memories, the knowledge, the culture and hopes of Aboriginal Tasmania. Now, that was a good segue, because the reason that Lance is in the studio is he's done a bit of analysis of some logs.
Indeed. So I think the thing worth saying, like when I mentioned that we dominated, right, we all like to stand on other people's shoulders, but in our team, so Justin, myself and Steve,
yeah,
I really hop on their backs, like they do all the heavy lifting. And so if you don't look at the scores, but if you look at the scores, they score slightly higher than me. And so
only slightly.
Yeah, only slightly. And so I thought what would be interesting is to grab Justin and Steve's log,
yep,
and then basically do some analysis with my log,
okay,
and try and figure out where it is that I'm giving up points,
okay,
so that I can feel like I'm contributing a little bit more, and where we go.
You learn from it. That's
indeed.
That's the thing about it.
So if I give you that,
I give you that, and I go to here. Now, let me zoom in a bit here. So what are we looking at here then?
So we're looking at two graphs. I'll just wait for our focus to fix itself up.
That's a bit better. Okay.
Okay. So these charts are by band.
Oh, okay. So the top one is what?
So the top ones are whatever your micro. So the top two are the microwave ones.
Oh yes. Okay.
And the bottom one would be 160, obviously, if you go to the left.
Okay.
That really tall spike is 40 metres.
Right.
Now, the interesting thing to note is this year, compared to last year, is I didn't have a 160 metre antenna up. And so I scored almost nothing on 160 metres, whereas last time that was actually quite a good score for me, like quite a good points.
Okay.
Especially in the good hours, like those nighttime hours, multiplied with CW worked really, really well.
Okay.
The other thing of note is on the far right, I don't have anything above 70 centimetres.
Right.
And if we look at yourself and Steve,
Big bulge here.
you know, so in the 1.2 gig and what's the other one? 3.4. 3.4. So the last two ones.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys have got a lot of points. So, sorry, I should mention the top chart is showing the number of points, and the bottom chart is showing the number of contacts. So the actual QSO count.
So this is points over here and contacts down here.
Cool. That's right. And so what's interesting is if you look at the number of QSOs for the microwave bands, and then look up at the top chart where you can see the number of points that equaled. You guys had a huge point haul by being on microwave that I didn't. And
can I just say that would be the 1 a.m. to 6 a.m. period, I suspect. That's where our triple points kick in. So,
but what was good for me is certainly to look at like the 2 metre, 70 centimetre. I wasn't that far below you.
Down here. So yours is the orange.
The middle one,
Okay. Oh, no, that's good.
And part of the reason we'll see on the next couple of charts is that I didn't work. You guys worked more hours than me. And so that's why you're higher there. So if we think about the bands, certainly not being on microwave is a big issue. For contributing points. So if we then move down to the next.
Give you this back.
This is less clear, but we'll put it up anyway and talk through it.
Okay. Cool. Push the button.
So what we're looking at here, again, the top one is the number of points, and the bottom one is the number of QSOs, but based on the timeline. So the very beginning of the contest on the left, the end of the contest on the right. That's right. And so if we look at that quiet hours section,
it's in here.
That's where you guys were operating and I wasn't operating. And so obviously there's a lot of points that have come through in that area.
The bulk of the points.
I think the interesting thing for me though is to look at most of the other regions where I was working less stations than you guys were, but knowing that I was active during those periods. So when I was active, I was active.
Oh, and those orange lines, if you take into account, those orange lines are like what they're on average probably half to 2/3 of what we were doing. So you were, especially down the bottom.
And so this is where I wanted to talk about part of my decision making around the contest. And why I didn't do so well. So one of my goals for this contest was to work CW. And try and work CW a lot for a couple of reasons. One, I just enjoy working CW when I can. And two, I figure the more people who are working CW, the more people who will work CW. So it's that sort of trying to create activity by being the activity. Right. Good. A couple of things I noticed though. One, there just didn't seem to be the volume of CW contacts this year.
Operators.
Which I was surprised at. I had assumed that there would have been more operators, but there weren't. But I also thought conditions were significantly worse for me this year than what they were last year. So whether that meant that there were just less stations that I was hearing, although my QSO count wasn't that far off, but I do know that there were significant periods
in comparison to last year.
But I do know that there were significant periods where, had I just been all about the contacts, I would have been working CW, dried it up, and then jumped straight back into sideband and worked sideband or back to FM. But I made the conscious choice to stay on CW and keep calling on bands where I knew that there should be lots of people. So that when somebody popped up on CW, they would have people there calling and people that they could then go back to. And so this is where I sort of think, right, well, what am I going to do next year? Because my reasons for doing CW remain. Is it valid to say, I know I'm not going to be as big of a points hauler, but I'm going to do an activity which I'm enjoying.
Yep.
And I think maybe because it's the RD, and the RD is so much about relaxed enjoyment.
Correct.
This is the time to actually do the encouraging thing.
Yep. Friendly contest.
And be there for the other people who are wanting to work CW and come along.
Okay.
One of the interesting things I had with my CW, though, was trying to work out what speed I called that, right? Because if I want to be really efficient and you want to call that contest speed, there's just not that many people in Australia who are going to operate.
People are going to hear that and get scared off.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. So I was fluctuating between sort of 16 and 18 words a minute. And I figured that's probably a good bracket. That,
middle of the road.
Yeah, people who are normally operating at 10 words per minute in a contest environment, if you're working, you sort of pick your speed up a bit. Some people came back slower than that, so then you slow down and you work them.
Yep. Did anyone ask you to slow down? No.
But I think if you're working someone, if they come back to me and they were slow, you
go back
inherently
to them
go slow.
What
What I found interesting though is Graham VK2GR, I think, who ended up winning the CW.
Yep.
Like he was doing his 30 or 35 words a minute or whatever it was. Like he was honking along, and so I was really keen to contact him afterwards and say, like, how did you do? How did you find operating at the fastest speed went? But I never got around to it, and then the results came out, and I was like, oh right, well it seemed to work for him. But that's only when I heard him, so maybe he was operating a bit slower as well.
Or
maybe
he did that thing and come back at the cadence that he's being transmitted to, so maybe he did.
Or maybe being in New South Wales, he just had more, he had access to more CW operators that he could reach and work. Once again, 20 metres, which normally would be a great band for getting the broader part of Australia, just was a non-starter because there's a Russian contest at the same time, CW contest, and I know from last year, like as soon as you start calling on 20 metres, like once they get you, because you're a massive multiplier for them, and so they just hammer you, and whilst normally the trick is you just work them and move on, the problem is we don't get any points for working non-Australian New Zealand stations, and so you're basically just tying yourself up, working Russians for no benefit to you at all, but obviously they're happy.
I had a couple of US stations come back to me on 40 metres, and I made the contact with them, but I just went, well, okay, I made the contact with them, but that's about it. It's just
And so I found that disappointing again, that I couldn't use 20 metre CW to get the broader, like,
so VK6, VK8, VK4,
well, VK4 Northern, VK2 even,
P2, etc., etc., or ZL,
so look, all in all, again, super fun contest, but it's good for me to know where I was giving points away, and knowing that part of it is something I could do something about, but I probably don't want to, as in, don't work phone. Actually, one of the things that I really enjoyed for it, and I wasn't able to maintain it for long periods of time, is I would have the radio on 40 metres with my Kia running, calling CW on, calling CW, and sort of calling CQ on CW, and then in between, like in the little gaps when it wasn't calling CQ, I was then on 2 metre 70 centimetre going, making quick voice contacts, and so trying to interleave the contacts was so much fun when it worked, but I could only maintain it for like 10 minutes, and then just the cognitive overload. Because I'd rigged this thing up the day before the contest, where I could switch the two radios, either both ears, or HF in this ear and
how did that
2 metre. Amazing! It was so good. So when I was calling CQ on CW, and in the gaps working 2 metre 70, like having them in separate ears was amazing, because it's quite incredible how your brain just starts listening to the two different signals as totally separate. Whereas if they were both coming into both ears, like that became really hard. And so there was that. So I was trying to do that to try and mitigate this thing of just sitting and calling CQ and waiting for the the CW contacts.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I'd like to do more of that next year, and sort of practice it a bit more and get that going a bit better.
And Lance, that's a little bit. It matches my strategy, but not from a CW phone point of view, because my strategy was very much, if there were people on 2 and 70 and the microwave bands, I could work them, I would work them, but I would instantly, as soon as they dried up, go back to HF.
Yep.
And just keep trying HF. And in fact, there were quite a number of times where, there's two ways of doing it. You sit on a frequency and you get people come to you. That's sort of successful, and it's not successful in that 1 to 6 a.m. period. You've got to go looking for people.
Yep.
So some of the times I actually stopped on HF on that frequency, did the 2 metre, 70 centimetre microwave whatevers, and then came back and there was still nobody on that frequency. So I went straight back into that frequency and just kept calling. And a couple of times that actually worked. So, but yeah, similar sort of thing.
And one of the things that worked so well, because obviously if I'm calling CQ on HF and another person pops up on CW, if I haven't worked them, of course you jump across and you work them.
Yep.
One of the things that was great was with my logging software and my my waterfall display that I had.
Yep.
Once I could tag a station, and then I'd get a marker on my waterfall that was them. And so, which is great, because then you go back and you come back, and the colour of them in your bandscope dictates whether I work them or not, or whether I can work them. And so, which was such a benefit to, if I've gone away and worked other places, so come back to that band, not having to go, oh, there's a signal, have I worked that person, do I need to go back and waste time doing that? You just know. Yeah.
So what software were you using to do that? Like, what were you using for logging? What were you using for the waterfall?
Yep, so N1MM was my logger.
Okay.
And then I had that set up that whenever I worked someone, it would automatically create an internal spot. Okay. And then I was using SDR console to show my waterfall, and that was then picking up my internal spots. Okay. Okay. And what's also really good with it is I don't even have to work the station. I can just type the call sign in, and if I can't get through, if I roll away to a different frequency, it automatically puts that call sign in my little window. Yeah. Okay. As you go back to it. Yeah. Nice. Very nice. So it worked well. Oh no, good stuff. Yeah. Good stuff. Okay. Oh well, that is excellent. And I just harking back to your comment about you didn't think that there were as many CW operators. The interesting thing that backs that up is we had Jordan 3ACU and we had Nick Whiskey. Basically, they were the only two. Now they were the only two that put in logs, so there would have been more, but they were the only two that put in logs and one first and second in the CW QRP section. Yeah. Which I just sort of thought, oh come on, there's got to be more people around or whatever else. But I think part of the problem is there's just so few CW operators that if I were, because what I'd dearly love would be to be able to work the RD contest just CW. But if I did that, I would be twiddling my thumbs for most of the contests. Well, so it's just not viable. No. And so I think what happens is even the people who are keen CW operators will work phone as well. Just, I guess if you want to do the contest and actually work the 24 hours and be there, and because part of the fun of it is the excitement and the not just popping in for 2 minutes or for 5 minutes every hour. It's actually just working as much as you can, and you just can't do that with CW. And certainly from Tassie, there's just not the contacts available. I always remember we had Martin VK7GN come and give us a talk a long time ago on contesting, and I have been in Martin's shack, and there is plastered, CW worldwide certificates and plaques. It is very impressive. But I always remember him saying, it's all about the time your bum is on the seat
making contact. And there is a great little chart in VKCL that shows the I think they're 15-minute periods or something. There's something like that, but shows the rate at which you're making contacts. And the standard profile is at the start of the contest everyone's making contact, so it's a really high rate, high gradient the whole bit, and then it sort of backs off, and then maybe if it takes into account points, it bumps up at 1 a.m. or whatever, and but that I always remember it's about you being there, actually making contacts, not sitting there doing something else. It's you actually calling CQ or making a contact or going to a band where there's other contacts or whatever else. And I sort of went, it's about, and for those people who operate for 24 hours, you have to go for 24 hours.
Yeah.
And with whatever caffeine induced coma you're in, whatever it is, you've got to work that out. So yeah, it is about bum on seat making contacts.
Yeah.
So and in fact that's probably it's probably good good advice for any contest really. It's just this one just happens to be 24 hours.
Yeah.
So fantastic.
Yeah.
That is excellent, Lance.
So good fun, good learnings afterwards.
Cool.
And I think that the easiest thing for next year is going to be to beg, borrow, or steal microwave and beyond microwave.
Yep. Yeah.
Because that's just a whole haul of points which are just sitting there that I can just grab pretty
Can
much.
I just say, this is within the rules, but it's probably pushing the rules, and I admit that. I made some contacts, some CW contacts on 23 centimetres and 9 centimetres.
So I was going to ask you about that. Did you actually switch to CW mode, or
No.
did you use an oscillator or something over the head?
Oh, hang on. Oh, it's this one.
Yeah, that's excellent.
And I held the microphone up to the speaker and keyed in.
Yeah.
And Martin did the same thing.
Yep.
Martin did exactly the same thing. So we did that on 23 centimetres, we did that on 9 centimetres, and I also did it on 160 metres. That literally, like four of those points is 48. 4 of those contacts, are 48 points in 4 contacts.
Yeah.
And so it's on the microwave bands, 160 metre, fantastic, and I made a number of contacts on 160 metres during that period. But the microwave bands, that's sort of probably pushing the envelope a bit.
Not
but
really. I mean, you're using the mode.
So but anyway, that's and if you're after points, that's how you get points. And can I just say, you get greater, you get that multiplier during the 1 a.m. to 6 a.m. But that's balanced by there aren't that many people on from 1 to 6. So it's probably a balance. And we had a conversation before we came on air tonight. It'd be very interesting to do an analysis of, for those stations that actually worked through that 1 a.m. to 6 a.m. period, sum the points that they got in that 1 to 6 a.m. compared to the 2 periods either side.
Yep.
And I suspect they're about the same. So a lot of people, the reason they won is that they got this points injection from 1 a.m. to 6 a.m. and that pushed them up in points. Yep. But when you actually do that analysis, I suspect the before and after probably equals what they got in the middle, what they got in that period, because there just aren't the number of people that you're making contacts with.
Yep.
That's so there's a bit of a balance that goes on there. So
actually, what I found interesting was looking. So what you presented last week.
Yeah.
When I was watching the video afterwards, and what it looked like to me is heaps of people stay up till midnight or whenever the beginning is.
The 1 a.m.
And they work the 1 a.m. and then they're not necessarily working.
Plateaus.
So it's this big hump comes down and then they're all back at 5 a.m.
Yeah.
And I think that's where they have their sleep.
Yeah.
And it's almost, if you didn't want to work the whole night, it's worthwhile getting up for 1 a.m.
Yep.
and being up for 5 a.m.
Yeah.
and getting those.
And in fact, Steve, I think it was Steve. Steve set his. Was it Steve
or Ron who worked?
No, it was Ron. It was Ron. It was Ron.
What a great idea!
And little micro sleeps, little power sleeps. I think they on the signs in Victoria they're called power sleeps. Little power sleeps in between, and so that's great. That's a strategy, and Ron's now got his certificate. He didn't actually realise, and I'm very remiss of us to not let him know that the certificates all come out in one big PDF, and you grab yours and print it. So Ron's very proudly grabbed his, and I think he's off to Officeworks tomorrow and get it printed on cardboard. So it's good. It's fantastic. So stick around, Lance, because our next segment, I've got. I'm going to mix it up a little bit here. Our next segment is, surprise, surprise, about Morse code. I'm just going to jump across. We've got a bit of a promo on. You guessed it, the conference. So we'll push that to the end. I've got, as people know, or they may not know, I collect Morse keys and keys. Got a few of them. And so, that's because they're doing bits and pieces. We've still got our stream going out because it's a different provider. Okay, we'll get our we've lost our for those on the stream. We've lost our chat channel, but don't worry about that. So I've got 3 keys that I bought in, which have some unique characteristics. The very first one, and you probably, some of you will go, oh, I saw this last time. Not quite. This is a ship key, so a maritime key, produced by the Marconi Instrument Manufacturing Company, or MIMC, which is a classic. That's the thing you look for to say that it's a unique. It's actually a genuine Marconi key, and it was produced. This one is an Australian one because it's got the AWA plaque on it as well. So the Amalgamated Wireless Australasia. So this was manufactured for AWA. This is a ship's key, and the difference with this one and the one I showed the other day is you'll notice it is an insulated key. So this has got a big plastic shroud around it. So what that's telling me is this was actually keying high voltage. So if I take the cover off, these are beautifully made keys. So
unless you've done it before, Justin, you should explain why keys used to key high voltage, because no one has to worry about high voltage.
No. Well, on many transmitters, you were keying plate voltages. So what they would do, they'd have a valve, a reasonable size valve, and you were actually keying the plate voltage. Now, the plate voltage on most valves is hundreds of volts, and so you obviously needed to. Okay, that's just telling me it's offline. You obviously needed to actually insulate your keys, so you weren't you weren't shocked, not electrocuted. If you just got that definition. If Kevin's watching, I've got that definition. I think Kevin does watch too, every so often. But so there are many keys around, and it's a dead giveaway that it was actually keying high voltage on a valve transmitter, because there is insulation all around the end that the operator had their hand on. So this particular one has a couple of inductors. Hang on, I'll go a bit close up here. So this has a couple of inductors. It's got terminal blocks. If I turn it over, you'll see these are ball bearing races on the pivot point, or fully adjustable. And if I doubt I can do this because I don't think I'm going to be able. Oh, maybe I can. Can I zoom in here? I just want to show. Ooh, I can't go quite so far. So let's zoom out. There we go. So this is a 365C. It's a pretty standard model for shipping. And you'll notice, made in England, and it's the Marconi Instrument Manufacturing Company in London. And if I turn it over, you'll see the AWA sticker, the AWA plate on it. So this was produced for AWA by Marconi. So this is a ship's key, beautiful key to actually operate, and it comes with a nice little cover. There are a number of maritime ship operators who are actually in the club who will recognise that key and go, oh, I know that key, or I've used one of those keys, or something like that. So anyway, that was the first key. Beautiful key, great to operate. Now the second key I've got here. Now I'll hold this up. I've got to do my weightlifting exercises here because that is a solid piece of steel that's been mounted on. But this is following on with the maritime theme. This is called a Flameproof, so a US Navy Flameproof key. The number is CTE 26003A, typical military number. The interesting thing is this design came from a Luftwaffe key, so a German Air Force key. Absolutely fascinating. Now, what makes it a flameproof key? Okay, flameproof key, and actually it's probably easier to show here. If I go here and zoom back out again, do a bit of focus here. This is a bit of a different design. You've got a lever arm that goes into a fork, and then this disappears inside this particular box. And there are obviously a set of contacts that you can still adjust here, so to get the gap the way you want it. But this is fully enclosed, and there are little little glands where that shaft goes in each side, so there is no air contact between the outside world and the contacts inside that box. The reason they need flameproof keys is in areas where there is explosives, or there is a chance of a spark igniting something like a liquid or a fluid or something.
Well, I think in the aeroplanes it was so much fuel vapor.
Correct, and so that's why they needed a flameproof key, because they obviously didn't want to in keying, and if there was a spark between the contacts, obviously didn't want it to then ignite things and that sort of thing. Again, beautiful key to operate, and one of the comments I came across about this key is you really need to actually bolt it to the desk or put it on a thumping great bit of metal, and I went, somebody's read that and put it on a thumping great big piece of metal. Very nice key, a beautiful operation. It's just a very positive. Hang on, let me plug it into a keyer. So this is US Navy flameproof key. There were many made. The interesting connection here is the actual design was originally a German design, and obviously it was one of those designs that the Americans thought, oh well, we probably can't improve that, and they just copied it. So produced by a whole range of companies, including German companies and American companies, many around. So yeah, you'll probably see them come up in on eBay or whatever else. Now, sticking with the military theme, there's a little box here which has come all the way from It's got a Royal Mail sticker on it, so it's come all the way from the UK. This is a Racal. Now, this is, and I know the cord looks pretty dodgy because the plastic that's on the cord is starting to crack off. It's become brittle, but this key actually has never been used. It's brand spanking new. It's actually in the Racal box. And the interesting thing about this particular key is it comes with a strap that you strap to either your leg or your arm, one or the other, to operate. And it is a flame-proof key. It's fully enclosed, absolutely fully enclosed. You don't have much in the way of movement on it, and I actually, to be brutally honest, I don't actually know how you... no, there's adjustment screws in there. So you can widen the gap on the adjustment screws.
Do you know what it feels like, though? It feels like there's a rubber boot that which would make sense if it's meant to be a sealed unit.
And it is. That's the rubber boot in there. So this is, and literally this is absolutely brand new. It's never been used in service. Comes with a little strap, the canvas strap. It's obviously khaki green, but Racal, the particular unit that it was used on was called a Clansman, and Peter Dodd, VK7 KPC up in Entark, has a number of Clansman units that he uses. They're QRP HF, a couple of band HF type units. They're man pack radios. So they go in a man pack. They have an antenna that sticks out the side, and this was the key that you either strap to your leg or you strap to your arm, and then you can key off.
And certainly not a connector you normally find on a key, is it?
Very military in connector, and I'll just show you the connector. That's a multi-pin connector. It's actually a 6-pin connector, although only 2 of them are obviously used. I think. No, that's shielded cable, so I don't actually know how many conductors are in that. But anyway, that's the Racal Clansman unit, absolutely brand new, and you can see all the plastic coming off the cable. have to find a equivalent and replace it. But that's the Racal Clansman CW key. So actually, it's sort of put it everywhere, hasn't it? So there are three more from the collection. I'm just full of it.
So I've got a question for you then. So just talking about multiple pins on that. You know, the really, really old keys, they would have the 3 wires, so that it would basically, the one would switch it between transmitting and
receive. Yeah,
receiving.
That was your changeover relay.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And so when was it that keys stopped needing that?
I don't know. I don't know an actual date, but I suppose when they started putting changeover relays actually in the transmitters.
Yeah.
I know a lot of the older sets and the ship sets, they would have not had changeover relays. They would have relied on it being the key.
Yeah.
But as a date, I'm not sure. I don't know.
Because there would have been, because when you had your separate transmitter and receiver, you didn't need it.
Correct.
Because your receiver was always receiving.
Yep.
And you had perfect break-in. You know.
Well and truly.
And then there was that
talking.
point where they started integrating them, where then the key needed to do the switching for you.
Yeah. I'm just bringing up. We've lost our internet connectivity here because they're doing some bits and pieces on our internet. Because I'll ask the question of the people on the chat channel. So we've got Andy from the UK. We've got Darren from VK4GEO. We've got Ken ZL4 KD from Christchurch. We've got Ron. Hello, Ron. We've got Ray Hamer. Not sure of your call sign yet, Ray, but you might want to drop that in the chat at some point. David Bannister, DBX. Bronson the Cat, I think from Queensland. And CDW, Chris, and video stuff, Taz, I think is VKK out in the club rooms. So if there is anybody who is either a maritime operator or an early operator who knows when we changed over to changeover relays, and maybe that's the answer. When we actually went to transceivers, you then have a requirement to either change over using the key or change over using a changeover relay.
Or internal logic, yeah.
Well and truly.
Itself, yeah.
Well and truly.
So I wonder what that when that happened. Because, you know, you look at the old rigs where people would have to flick the little switch on the front.
Correct.
So there was no auto switching.
In fact, in the 60s, I have these sets. The first commercial Yaesu transmitter and receiver, so the FL50 and the FR50, so they were 50 watt, HF and HF without work bands, because work bands didn't exist at that stage. So that was a separate. You flicked a switch.
Yeah.
That was it. You actually flicked a switch. So and I have them. I'm very proud of those, and I'll restore them at some point. I absolutely love them because I always remember that was my introduction to the RD.
Okay.
Because Dad would always put a log in for the RD. He'd do a page, and that was his log. But he'd always do a log and put it in.
Yep.
And so I have a bit of a thing that I will always do at least a page, and I'll put it in. It's sort of I've overcome with a few other things right at the moment. But anyway, so fantastic. A few different keys that we. I'm being very, very, very gingerly with this because there were bits falling off of it all over the place. So now, okay, bit of an update. I showed last week the GPS Speedo. I now have. I'll just clear off the bits of lead. I now have a PCB. I now have a PCB made up for it. Very simple little PCB, one-sided, single-sided PCB. You've got the Arduino that is soldered into the PCB upside down. Then you've got the GPS module, the Neo 6 GPS module, and the GPS antenna on top of that. And then you've got the little OLED display on the front. That's on a little daughter board that is literally soldered together on both sides. The little daughter board which gives me the 4 connections to the OLED display. So, and you'll notice the PCB, actually you might not notice that. The PCB, thanks Lance. The PCB is a little bit wider than everything else, and I'm just coming up with a 3D printed box design that has little rails on either side, and the little rails it slides into the box using those little rails. So that's the and my battery has just gone west. I'll grab that in a minute. Battery's just gone west, but anyway, that's the GPS Speedo module that I showed last week in a slightly tidier form. There is no breadboard in sight, and there are no hookup wires in sight. So that's our we'll go to here. That's a bit better. The GPS Arduino GPS module, and I put all of the links to all of the libraries and all of the information you need about that in the chat, in the video information last week. So if you want more information about that, please have a look at that. So now I was going to show you, but I can't because the computer is no longer connected. Let me just try something here. I'm just going to try. That is not long enough. Oh, that is though. Okay. Let me just try something here. I'm going to plug... I'm going to plug that in and it does absolutely nothing. So, oh yes it does. Okay, we might have our PC back online. Just bear with me, people. I'm having some having to deal with some technical challenges. I just want to show you the Tassie. I don't think we're going to get back online. That's I've got a connection here, but I am not seeing any connectivity. Okay, that's all right. We'll do this manually. Last week we went into the keynote speakers for the Tassie Hamicon. Let me do this manually. The Tassie Hamicon. This is, I can't bring it up on the screen, but I can show you manually. The Tassie Ham-Econ Amateur Radio Conference that is happening on the first weekend in November. The 2nd and 3rd of November, that's the Saturday and the Sunday, the very first weekend in November. We went through the keynote speakers last week, and I was going to go through a few of our speakers, a few of our other speakers who are giving us excellent presentations. Now, the very first one I thought I'd go through is Marcus, VK3TST. Now, Marcus is actually giving us a talk on centered around being secure on the internet. Now, Marcus is an actual cybersecurity expert. He's a cybersecurity assessor who's registered with the Australian Signals Directorate. He has had 10 years of experience in cybersecurity, worked in government, defence, industry, etc. He's also a qualified school teacher. And he's giving us a talk on exploring accessible security concepts and practical technologies that can be used in the shack or building out infrastructure over the internet. So that should be a fantastic talk. It's titled Keep Your Hobby Safe and Secure on the Modern Hostile Internet, whether you want to run a remote rig or link a network of repeaters. So should be absolutely fascinating. Now, another one that we've got as part of the weekend is Kyle Krieg, AA0Z Zulu, so Alpha Alpha 0 Zulu. His talk is on remote ham radio using Flex Radio and Node Red, but it is applicable to other configurations. And Node Red is an easy-to-learn flow-based programming language that ham radio operators can use to build simple web-based dashboards which provide command and control and automation in their ham shack. So should be absolutely fascinating, and I understand there will be a bit of a demonstration as well as part of that particular talk. Now, Kyle received his amateur radio license in 1995 while being at the University of Missouri, and over the past 25 plus years has been involved in many net operations, ARES, SLSRC leadership, Arden repeaters. Arden we talked about in the zombie apocalypse talk, the MCOM talk, and HF, POTA, SOTA, portable and contesting. So he's also very involved with the St. Louis and Suburban Radio Club. So it should be an absolutely fascinating talk. And now we have a repeat offender here in David Minchin, VK5 Kilo. VK5KK is actually coming back to give us a talk on the microwave bands, namely the 241 gigahertz band, pushing the boundaries even higher. Now, David gave us a fascinating talk on his work with the 134 gig, 122 and 134 gig bands when he gave us a talk in 2022. He's now come back and gone up to almost our highest band, which is 241 gigahertz. It will be a talk and a demonstration of 241 gigahertz. live in the Sir Stanley Burberry Theatre. So now, David is a jet setter. He works for a company overseas, and whenever I contact him, he says, "Oh no, I'm in Germany, or I'm in France, or I'm in somewhere else," and then will contact me a few days later and say, "Oh no, I'm back in Australia now." So he's all over the place. So he's an RF professional. Also spent 30 years as a WIA volunteer, including stints in the VK5WIA president and as editor of the VHF, UHF and Expanding World column in AR magazine. And is presenting a follow-up on his 2022 microwave presentation focusing on 241 gigahertz equipment and antennas, and details will soon be published in Jubis and other publications. So that's 3 more presenters. So that's 6 presenters who will be presenting at the Tassie Hamicon. It takes place at the Sir Stanley Burberry Theatre at the Sandy Bay campus of UTAS. If you haven't already, there is your QR code to book, and if you haven't already, the program is up on the conference website, and I'll put links in the video descriptions, and it also includes this is the program for the weekend, and that's also your QR code for booking. So do yourself a favour and book a ticket to the Tassie Hamicon. And I know many of you who are on our video stream have already done that. So congratulations, you have your ticket. And just to mention, our raffle prizes, very nice. Very nice. Includes a IC7300, a FTM 500 from Yaesu portable rig, an ID51 handheld from ICOM, TET Mtron vouchers, Messi Poloni vouchers, DigiRig vouchers, and a whole bunch of other raffle prizes. The only way you can get a raffle ticket or tickets is to come along. So there's your incentive. So there you go. As I said, do yourself a favour. Now, space weather report. Space weather. There is very little space weather. Fortunately, everything seems to have settled down. There was a bit of a warning around some HF fade out a couple of days ago, which I think has disappeared, but it's all settled down. So there you go. Now we're at 8:23. So I might leave the Jubis magazine. Jubis this quarter has 2 articles, 2 little articles, one big article and one little article by VK7. So I'll go into that next week. No, not next week. Not next week. The in a couple of weeks' time. So, just to finish off, reminders of what's happening over the next few weeks. Next week is our special forum. So this is a bit of a hybrid forum on PCBs through the ages. So, printed circuit boards from the 1970s all the way through to the current day, and the wonderful services that some organisations give you, where you can design up a PCB, send it off on the internet, and magically in the post in a couple of weeks' time you get absolutely beautiful PCBs with silkscreen on them and everything in your mailbox for pretty reasonable prices. So there you go. So all the way through to those modern day services. So that is next week, starting at 7:30 p.m. It is a hybrid forum, so we'll have some subject matter experts start kicking off, and then we'll hand over to people. We'll have lots of show and tell about how PCB designing has improved out of sight. over the years. We'll even have some booby prizes and door prizes that involve obviously the theme of printed circuit boards. So yeah, come along. Then on the second Wednesday, which is October the 9th, we have another open repeater forum with some subject matter experts. One of the main ones being Hayden VK7HH, who is our repeater guru, giving us an idea of what a new and modern repeater network looks like, and the trials and tribulations of keeping it going. Oh, pardon me, dear oh dear. I need some coffee. Now. Then we go back to our DATV nights, our Wednesday Experimenters Groups nights, and we'll kick off with Jubis and a few other things. Then November, obviously the 1st to the 3rd. Now the thing I didn't mention when I was talking about the conference, the Friday night, which is November the 1st, the Friday night from 5:30, there is a sausage sizzle barbecue tea up here at the club rooms, so you need to book that as part of your ticket. But you can come up, a bit of a social event, get to know the people who are going to be at the conference, maybe get to know some of the presenters as well, have a bit of a chat with them before you see them on the Saturday and the Sunday presenting. So yeah, great. We have had some great feedback about the barbecue, so well worth coming up and having a bit of a look. Then on November the 13th, we have a bit of a debrief and a feedback forum about the conference, so that we can feed that into the next one. And then on December the 1st, we have our end of year celebration, because the end of the year is roaring towards us at a great rate of knots. So we do a bit of a celebration on having a fantastic year. So anyway, that's your blooming lot for this week. This has been VK7OTC, the club station of the Radio and Electronics Association of Southern Tasmania, with our DATV Experimenters Night, or our Wednesday Experimenters Night, our WEGS Night. And bidding you 73. Hope to see you next time. And next time is our PCB forum, so we'll see you all on the stream then. 73, and we'll catch you around. Cheers.